First Peter chapter 1, verses 6 through 7. And I'll be reading from the New Living Translation. And it reads, "So be truly glad. There is wonderful joy ahead, even though you have to endure many trials for a little while. These trials will show you that your faith is genuine. It is being tested as fire tests and purifies gold, though your faith is far more precious than mere gold. So when your faith remains strong through many trials, it will bring you much praise and glory and honor on the day when Jesus Christ is revealed to the whole world." You may be seated. I use for a subject title today, Purpose for Your Storm. Purpose for your storm. Have you ever been in a place where nothing seemed to be going right? Your personal relationships may be rocky and the word divorce or the words breakup may come to mind. Or your money situation may be tight. You can't afford that bill that is due and your children, they need food and you don't have money for either. Has some type of illness suddenly come into your body like cancer, diabetes, a stroke, or a heart attack? These examples and many other can be labeled as a trial or a storm in your life. Some of you may be dealing with a storm right now. Some of you may have just walked out of a storm, and some of you may be getting ready to walk into a personal storm. The definition of storm in this form means to attack or capture something suddenly or violently. The definition of trial is a state of pain or anguish that tests patience, endurance, or belief. In this first chapter, Peter, who was an apostle of Jesus Christ, was writing to the chosen people. Peter starts off the chapter by telling the chosen people to give all praise and glory to God our Father. Now, that made me think for a second. The very first thing that Peter tells the chosen people is to give all praise and glory to God our Father. So my brothers and sisters, I tell you the same thing. When you wake up in the morning, you ought to start your morning off by giving all praise to God our Father. For it was not that alarm clock that woke you up this morning. It was not your mother or your father. It was not your sisters or your brother. No, it was not even yourself. But it was God who woke you up this morning. So you ought to start off by giving praise to God our Father. Peter goes on to write about God's grace and mercy. He talks about how the chosen people were born again because God raised Jesus from the dead. Peter writes that there is a reward waiting in heaven for us, those who have been born again, but we have to go through many trials here on earth before we can reach that reward. Now, before I move on, I want to establish exactly who Peter is. This is the same Peter that Jesus chose to be one of his 12 disciples. The same Peter who denied knowing Jesus not once, not twice, but denied knowing Jesus 3 times. After denying Jesus, Peter felt ashamed and full of guilt. Even though Peter denied knowing Christ, the apostle of Jesus went on to become one of the boldest, most influential, and effective leaders of the early Christianity. Now, trials and tribulations, they are a part of life. We cannot escape some of the things that we will have to endure from day to day. We have to understand that we will get through it, but we'll get through it with God's help. For Jesus told his disciples in John 16, verses 33, "I have told you this so you will have peace in me. Here on earth you will have many trials and sorrows." Jesus did not tell the disciples you will have one trial or one sorrow. He didn't say you would have some trials or some sorrows, but he said you will have many trials and many sorrows. But Jesus goes on to say, "But take heart, because I've overcome the world." So your question may be, how do we handle ourselves when we experience personal storms in our life? Well, James chapter 1, 2 through 4, it says, "Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect, needing nothing." When you experience storms, you should look at it as my faith is being tested, but I'm not going to allow the enemy to get the best of me. God always allows us to go through storms because it builds our faith. The more storms you experience, the more your faith has an opportunity to grow. And not only will it help you to build your faith, but you never know when you need to help someone that may be dealing through a storm that you made it through. How can we be a testimony to someone else if we never experienced any storms in our life? So when that relationship is going rocky, you're having rocky moments, you have to embrace it and work at it. Remember, it's only a test of your faith. Nobody ever said that the relationship was going to be easy, but if God puts you together, you have to work at it. When troubles come, remember, consider it an opportunity for great joy. This gives you a chance for your endurance to grow, so you are working toward being perfect and complete. So remain strong when those bills are due and you don't have any money. You have to have faith that God will take care of those bills and he will provide food for your kids. I remember one time I was in college and I was staying by myself. I had a bill due. I only had $20 to my name. At the time, everyone who knew Marquis in college knew he was going to be working at least 2, if not 3 jobs. And everybody knew that I was a proud man at the time, and so I wasn't going to ask my parents, my family, or my friends for anything. Well, in that moment, my brothers and sisters, me working those 2 or 3 jobs, that didn't help my situation. Me being a proud man, that definitely didn't help my situation. I remember getting on my knees and praying to the Lord. I didn't know what I was going to do at the time, but I knew God would step in and he would help. Lo and behold, the very next day I went to the mailbox and there was a card from my grandmother. Inside the card, she wrote, "Just thinking about you." And there was a check in there as well. That money allowed me to pay all of my bills. You see, I had faith that God was going to take care of me, and he did just that. So in any storm or trial that you're in, you got to give it to God and believe that he will take care of you. And if you believe it, he will do just that. And in that moment, your faith grows just a little bit more. You see, we have to understand that life is not always going to be easy, but we must hold on to our faith in times of trouble. We must trust God when those bill collectors are calling. We must trust God when sickness enters into our bodies. We must trust God when that mate breaks up with us. We must trust God when we just don't understand. We must trust God no matter how big or how small our storms may be, for God is the only one that can tell the storm to be still. Remember the story in Luke chapter 8 when Jesus and the disciples got in the boat to go to the other side of the lake? When they got into the boat and started on their way, Jesus laid down and he went to sleep. While they were on the boat, a strong storm occurred. The wind started blowing and the waves started to rise and water started to fill the boat. The disciples were fearful for their lives. They woke Jesus up and shouted that they were going to drown. Jesus stood up and simply rebuked the winds and calmed the waves. Once the boat stopped sinking, Jesus asked the disciples, "Where is your faith?" So I ask you today, my brothers and sisters, where is your faith in times of troubles and when the storms are raging in your life? I know sometimes situations may get hard, but you have to hold on to that faith, never losing it. Think about those disciples in the boat during the storm the next time you're experiencing a trial in your life, and imagine Jesus saying to you, "Where is your faith?" The same Jesus who rebuked the winds and told the waves to be still is the same Jesus that can calm the storm in your life. Remember, I pointed out in the beginning of the text that the first thing that Peter said to the chosen people was to give all praise and glory to God our Father. Well, I'm here to tell you, not only give God all praise and glory first thing in the morning, but give him praise and glory when your relationships are going bad. Give him all praise and glory when your bills are due and you don't have any money. Give him all praise and glory when sickness enters into your body. Give him all praise and glory when your kids are misbehaving and on the streets. Give him all praise and glory when that person you're dating walks out of your life. Give him all praise and glory when that supervisor on your job is treating you bad. Give him all praise and glory when you don't know which way to turn. Give him all praise and glory not only when things are going good in your life, but give him all praise and glory when things are going bad. Give him all praise and glory when you're getting ready to go into a storm. Give him all praise and glory while you're in the storm. And give him all praise and glory when you're coming out of the storm. My brothers and sisters, there are always 3 stages that you're going to be in. You're either going to be getting ready to go into a storm, you're going to be in a storm, or you're going to be getting ready to come out of a storm. And if you don't have any storms in your life, if you're not in those 3 stages of life, I'm going to be praying for you, because that means the devil already got you. I have one more story and I'm gonna rush to a close. There was a little boy who had been dealing with a lot of storms in his life. After his parents' divorce, he stayed with his mother. She did the very best she could to raise the young boy. The young boy, he dealt with many personal issues and seemed to be very troubled. Once he got to high school, his mother made a very tough decision. But she thought it would be for his best to let her son go stay with his father. Once the young boy moved in with his father, he still faced many storms in his life. He had always gone to church, but around the 5th grade, he started taking notes while the preacher was preaching. He used to take those notes home and study and read the Bible, for he loved church. When he turned 16 and he could drive, he would be the first person out of his house on Sunday mornings to go to church. But even with all the love for God and church, he still dealt with many personal issues. When he graduated from high school, he decided to go to college and defeat the odds. Although many people thought that he wasn't going to make it, he did have some supporters. Once he was in college, things started to turn around for the young man. He seemed to be a lot happier, and those personal issues, they seemed to go away. His family could tell that he was doing a lot better. The young man stayed in church and he grew spiritually. The summer going into his last year of college, the unthinkable happened. At the age of 23, the young man was diagnosed with cancer. When he found out he was all by himself, he didn't have any family or friends around. Of course, he cried when he found out. But after about 5 minutes of feeling sorry for himself, he got on his knees and he began to pray. During that prayer, he heard the Lord speak to him, and the Lord said, "My son, you're going to be just fine. This is just a test. Hold on to my words, because your days, they will get rough. But you just have to trust and believe and keep the faith, and I will deliver you." After that, the young man put a smile on his face, for he knew he was going to be just fine. The people that were around the young man when he was dealing with the illness would question, how could he be so happy during a time like this when he was facing such a serious illness? Some of his friends even forgot, because he never complained. He never lived his life as though he was sick. The young man always held on to God's words. There was one point when the man experienced a really rough time. His daddy had to hold him up because he was too weak to walk. His daddy looked down at his son, and he said that he wished that he had the cancer instead of his son. No parent wants to see their child sick and suffering. But the young man, being weak, looked up to his father and said, "Daddy, God has been preparing me for this." And he went on to say, "I'm purposed for this." To make a long story short, the young man still graduated from college that year, finished his treatments with cancer, and he's now in remission. My brothers and sisters, that young man, that's me. Most of my childhood, I remember was very difficult, and I experienced many storms. And I used to question all the time why it had to happen to me. As I got older, I understood better and better. I experienced those storms in my childhood because it made me turn to God at a very young age. I studied the word and I prayed all the time. Those storms helped to build my faith. Getting diagnosed with cancer at the age of 23 can be hard for those who don't have a strong faith in God. Believe me, my brothers and sisters, every storm you experience is helping to build your faith. Your faith will continue to get stronger and stronger. Like it says in James chapter 1, verses 4, so let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. Jesus, he walked this earth teaching the good news of God our Father. He healed the sick, made blind men see, and cured many others. Yet while he was here on earth, Jesus had to experience some storms. But his storms had a purpose, my brothers and sisters. There was a purpose for Jesus' storm when he had to carry that rugged cross. There was a purpose for Jesus' storm when they hung him high, stretched him wide, nailing his hands and his feet to the cross. There was a purpose for Jesus' storm when he hung his head in the locks of his shoulders and he died. There was a purpose for Jesus' storm when he laid in a tomb all night Friday night. There was a purpose for Jesus' storm when he had to lay in the tomb all day Saturday and all night Saturday night. But early Sunday morning, God raised Jesus up with all power in his hands. And the purpose for Jesus' storm was to save a sinner like you and a sinner like me. Thank you and be blessed.